right. Hello. Welcome back to XLN3, the podcast where we talk about the plays and players from XLNC's mid and heavy League of Legends tournaments. I'm your host, QuiteIndubitably, here with my two favorite goobers, Zephyr and Doctor, to help me break things down. Now, this week, we've got another interview for you. So we will be rolling that at the end once again. And as such, because I guess I just can't stay away from Heavy League, we will be starting with Doctor once again. Since I didn't last week, it occurs to me that I owe you all an apology. That when we told you that we recorded our interview with the Anarchy Fallen Paladins Botlane with me and Zephyr because Doctor was out apple picking, I failed you. I failed you in that I didn't make an apple a day keeps the doctor away joke, and I'm so sorry. I am so sorry.
That's where this was going?
That's where this was going. That is 100% where this was going. You're welcome.
You to know everything is peaking right now, and it's going to be so funny later when you have to go back and fix and record and edit all
Oh
this.
yeah,
And
it's
gonna
horrible.
blast your ears.
It's horrible.
I hope you enjoy it. But it was worth it because you got to make that terrible joke.
Yeah.
By the way, guys,
yeah.
I'm Zephyr. I'm a heavy league analyst.
And I'm the Doctor, our mid-league analyst. And apparently this was interview week because we were also able to interview the Glaives Esports bottom lane this week, as it's now playing in my own ears very loudly, Kiba and Issei. So we do have interviews across the board. That one, though, is only in VOD form. I will have to talk to some people and see if we can get that uploaded separately, because that was a pretty good interview. It was Mac and I able to sit down and talk with them after their 2-0 series this week.
Yeah,
Right.
speaking of 2-0s.
Speaking of 2-0s,
Still no ramen. Jake, you said you would do it. Still no video. I don't know what's going on here.
See, I didn't record video of me doing it, but earlier this week, I did actually eat some raw ramen because I was hungry. I didn't want to make anything. And our conversation about that raw ramen was stuck in my mind. And I was like, I'm going to go into the garage, get out a pack of ramen and eat it in my bed. And I did that. That being said, as we wait for the promised video, we should probably analyze League of Legends. So, all right.
That is what we're here for.
Into mid-league. The 2-0s that Zephyr mentioned before, definitely dominating again, Doctor. What are your thoughts?
I mean, this week went pretty much as expected. When you look at the actual rankings of the teams, we had Glaive Black 2-0 in Glacial Rising Phoenix. The Coyotes fell to Catalyst Blaze. Scarlet fell to Catalyst Frost. And Drift once again having a so-so showing, winning one and then going 2-0 after that. But I think across the board, they went pretty much as expected.
All right. Well,
I heard Zephyr cough, though, so maybe he has
I just
other
thought
thoughts.
There was a few games that were going to be a little bit closer. Not so much Coyotes and Glavebacks and blah, 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 but Scarlet and Callous Frost, I'm like trying to relay back to what we discussed last week because we went with predictions, but I definitely thought there was definitely more of a 3-game kind of spin on that one. And then Goliath Online versus Drift was also supposedly going to be a bit more competitive given that they were tied, and it was, but it also was really sad to see it wasn't like a 1-win, 1-loss, 1-win kind of thing. It was a 1-win and then the reverse sweep, which hurts more than anything.
Well, what, Zephyr, since you bring up those 2 Catalyst sets, right? The Catalyst Blaze set and the Catalyst Frost sets. Let's bring that up a little bit. Now, you say that you're... Thank you, Zephyr. You say that you're a little disappointed that the Catalyst Blaze versus South Dakota Coyotes games weren't closer.
No, but that one I understood. That's totally fine. That's supposed to be a 2-0. It was the Scarlet versus Frost one that makes me a little... I don't know. It's sad because they were very close going into that.
we were talking about those teams specifically previously about the hunt for second, right? Because Glaive Black seems to
Right.
be just so far ahead of everybody else this season that it was going to be that Frost Dag Scarlet matchup to really determine who was the strong second place. And so Frost is still tied with Black, so we are going to have to see as the next couple weeks come. I don't think they're set to play until the end of November though, so there's still a lot of wiggle room there. But now with Blaze coming on the upside, they're now actually tied for third with Scarlet, who, a week and a half ago was tied for second.
Right. I mean, those Catalyst Frost victories were pretty convincing.
I'm looking at them. I mean, I almost would go out on a limb and say kinda to it. Like, yes, they're convincing. I honestly thought the first game was a bit more competitive. Second game, I'll go with you on that one. 12K gold lead by the end. Continuous, constant achievement. 21-12. They did really well in that one, but the first game was definitely a lot closer. Something that I thought we were going to see more often, especially between these two teams. I mean, their max peak gold on average was only usually having like a 2K average gold lead over them until like the very end, and the kill lead wasn't even that crazy, and it only shot.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
And I mean, looking at the second game draft as we try and get Zephyr back, I mean, so we see Silas, and Silas in this league has been so critical to a lot of teams and their victories, because he is strong in such a way that he can be really overbearing in a lot of games. And when I look at the game here, it's Silas into Malphite, Karthus, Galio, Ashe, Thresh, which 4 of those 5 ultimates are amazing, like just game-breakingly amazing when you combine it with the bonus damage coming out of the Silas ultimate. So I mean, I don't know the exact pick order that went on here, but I mean, if that's like Silas 5th pick or 4th pick on blue side, like only one of those champions is like not counterpicked.
right.
Yeah.
The very difficult thing about drafting against a team that is willing to pull out the Silas is suddenly you don't want to have great ultimate abilities, and it's quite the challenge to play against.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is the healing. Like you need a healing cut item super early, and the composition that they built for themselves, Ashe is the only one feasibly able to build that type of item, and it just falls by the wayside because as soon as Silas is fighting not around the Ashe, all of a sudden he's unstoppable. Especially with how low damage this composition is, like full tank Malphite, AP Galio, and Karthus jungle, not really any super high damage scaling there.
Right, and as you alluded to, Doctor, it is really difficult in such a high magic damage composition, or, a composition that sees such a high percentage of its champions to be magic damage type champions. You can't have them all rush a Morellonomicon. LS would come murder you in your sleep.
Yeah, the book's cursed. Not really much you can do about it this season. Hopefully come preseason we do get some, updates there, and, magic dammers can actually survive these drain tank situations. But that's still, a month away, I think they said. It's coming sooner than January, but not soon enough for a lot of people.
It's preseason. I mean, come on. We first got to get through the end of this series or split, I guess. That's like November something.
Right.
Oh, you mean for these teams, yeah.
These teams, yeah.
I'm talking about
preseason
league.
Preseason is absolutely going to be wild. There's going to be a lot of things going on, including those buffs to heal cut. So
top cap is crazy, by the way. If you want to go back and look at that in this matchup as a whole, everyone else is really even to what you would expect, but top gap is miles.
Yeah, and I mean we're in a spot where we've talked about counterpicking a lot, right? And it comes down to, do you counterpick the mid or the support role for like the most efficiency? But we're also seeing situations where if you can play the bruiser fighter topside and counterpick that, that's just as impactful in a way, versus getting like the hard W in the bottom lane, right? Like we saw in game one, it was Urgot into Scion. Like that's a pretty decent counterpick there. Game two, it was Silas into Malphite. Like that lane is free.
I mean, it's a counterpick thing, and it's also player skill level too as well, knowing how to control that lane now. I don't know. I see, and you do see some subtle counter picks here and there. Like if you go mid lane, Lucian definitely has the pressure and power early here against Galio, and in terms of a major difference here, it's roughly 3K. But when you look top side, minimum gold leads have always been almost 6K in difference, whether it be through its CS gold advantage or just straight up kill lane. And
Yep.
I feel like even going into a counter, you have so many tools on your belt to mitigate and come back into it, especially when you're drafting towards what it looks like to be some heavy scaling team fight comps for the side here of my apologies. It was Scarlet, right? And the fact of the matter is it's falling really hardcore to the wayside and to the comparison of his other teammates. And then, like in game two, that was a major issue because later on, you're not only dealing with the talent and prowess of just picking Silas, having the hijack available at any given point, but also the fact that, he's, going into that final team fight, he's like 8 kills ahead. I mean, it's crazy.
Especially on a Silas.
Yeah, on that disgusting champ, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, on Silas, who is first of all disgusting, and second of all, when you have so few tools to deal with the Silas as that composition did, it feels hopeless at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on from the Catalyst matchups, I do want to shout out the set of Catalyst Blaze versus South Dakota Coyotes first game. I think that would have been a really exciting game to see streamed. Now, to South Dakota Coyotes, who have been struggling, to their credit, they maintained a lead for about the first 22 minutes of the game. Unfortunately, Catalyst Blaze pulled off this extremely massive comeback. Their Ezreal, over the course of that game, dealt over 30k damage. That was a 12-2 Ezreal, and as we all know, even when you're behind, if you have an Ezreal on the team, you just get that Ezreal to his items, you get one good team fight, and suddenly the Ezreal is in the game as if he was never behind.
Yeah, I mean, Ezreal's a champion where you can look amazing on it when you hit all your shots and you're doing all this amazing damage stuff and staying alive. And when you don't do that, he's one of the more useless champions in the game. But I'm looking at this draft from the Coyotes, and I think it's a strong draft, but with some like pretty...
Dude, where's your damage other than Samira?
Yeah, like there's some pretty glaring issues. In a sense where they just can't break through the defense side of Shen Alistar. Samira being the main damage target, I think that's doable in a way if you can back it up, which it looks like they attempted to with the Pantheon Morgana combination. But Morgana doesn't pose the best security net, especially heading into like AD styles like a Graves Ezreal. If you had like a Lulu mid, or I mean, heck, even if you got the Orianna mid instead, before your opponent did, like that could be very strong. And you use the Volibear, Amumu, Pantheon is just mostly peeling and try and play this like front to back team fight situation. That can work very well. But as they've drafted this composition, they have 2 full tanks in the Volibear, Amumu. You have Pantheon, who built Bramble Vest, Kindle Gem for the, sort of like the cooldown reduction build, which is less than stellar. And Morgana, who is very, quite literally, hit or miss. If you hit your binding, you do 1 billion damage. If you miss it, you don't do any damage.
I'll also say, much to QuiteIndubitably's point there, while, yeah, Coyotes do have a subtle gold lead. It's nothing crazy. I mean, at
I think this game would be
maximum,
fun. I will agree on that. This
yeah,
was it would have been a fun game to watch.
definitely would have been back and forth, but it's not even just that. You go back and a team who's looking to win should possess complete control over the game if they're looking to transform and maintain a gold lead, which it looks like Coyotes multiple times were in a situation where they were close to or nearly lost it, and they constantly were giving up slight major objectives, whether it be the subtle dragon, a rift herald on someone else's belt, a turret or two. It's competitive, right? And like you said, something fun to watch. But this isn't, if you want to make a composition like that work, especially going into something that has such a perfect front to back with team fight capability, you need to absorb a lead far earlier and take it to heights that are basically unreachable and you can't collapse back into it. And so that's something Coyotes didn't manage to do, and as a result it turned out exactly like it should have. Game got to late game scaling point, your major carries were up, can't get through Alistar Shen, and that's it. It just stacks up time and time against you. And mind
Right.
you, had they taken that first Drake at the very beginning of the game, they would have had Soul. And they did not.
And that's the
huge.
Amumu Graves matchup right there. Like Graves
Right.
is so much quicker to the draw, so much quicker to, ganking, objective timing, things like that. Just because Amumu, while in a decent spot, I would say for solo queue, because his clear's weird in that it's fast but not fast and healthy but not healthy depending on the player. It's just that he can't take dragons solo. Like it's just not a thing Amumu can do.
No.
And so were to ward up very effectively, if your bot lane is behind, which is entirely possible trying to fight off Ezreal Alistar, you lose priority. Orianna should have priority over Morgana for the first most levels, and then it just gives Graves on red side free entry, right? Like he doesn't have to go through the pixel bush, he doesn't have to blast cone over the wall or go through tri-bush. He can just walk down from blue entrance, and as long as that portion of it is clear, you're not going to know he's even there until it's done.
Right, and it was a sustained off an early kill on Amumu originally too. Gets the kill on Mumu, immediately rotates towards Dragon, secures that. And then once you saw some of the more mid-game potential, which I definitely think that's where this team comp scales and performs the best, that's kind of their window to find success. They managed to pick up turrets, dragons, control, they were there. It just wasn't quite to the pressure necessary to close everything out. So I feel like Coyotes, they've got it in terms of they can take a competitive matchup. It's just pacing at that point, especially when you're up against a comp like that. Speed it up. You probably would have won too.
Yeah,
Now,
Samira,
Zephyr.
should blow out it.
Yeah. Me.
All right. Sorry to cut you off there, Doctor. Did you have any final thoughts on this game?
I don't like teams picking Samira yet, is my only caveat. She's fun, engaging, can do some really interesting stuff. I just don't think she's a competitive AD carry at the moment.
Right. I was looking at some of the Samara picks throughout.
Samara.
I'm sorry,
Samara.
I always call her Samara.
Samurai.
I emphasize that weirdly.
They just released Yone and now Samurai.
Throughout, I think she was primarily picked in mid-league. I look where even she gets some early kills. Her damage numbers are somewhat underwhelming throughout these games. But moving on, Zephyr, earlier I heard you talking about top diff. And when you said top diff, that immediately made me think of game one between Goliath Online and Drift Esports.
Oh.
Now, this was the one game that Drift Esports managed to take off of Goliath Online before Goliath Online secured the 2-1.
Oh,
And
I see what you mean.
You see what I mean. That was a 35k damage Volibear. 17 and 1. That is... If that is not the most extraordinary top diff I have seen in competitive play, I don't know what is, and I have no clue how I don't remember a more extraordinary top diff.
What the heck is this?
It's a little severe. I I mean, this is kind of Drift Esports to a T, though. They have such incredibly high highs where they can do this and just like literally own the game. They have equally low lows, and I bet you if we look at either the next game or even the third game, it
Sure.
would be very similar to having some pretty low lows. Let's see, we have the 8 and 10 Ash and the. All right, game
Next
3 is
game
a
was
little bit more
pretty-
competitive.
Game 2 and 3. Game 2 is reasonably competitive. I would say. No one looked phenomenally, just super powerful in that one. And then game 3 is more on the wayside in terms of the gold advantage and whatnot. But either or, I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, Drift has it. I've said it on broadcast when we've broadcasted their games. They have the tools. It's just that sometimes they're using a ratchet set instead of a screwdriver, and it's just like it can look so good when they're on point. They just need to be on point more. And I mean, this game 1 is a perfect example of that. I mean, they have one of probably the better drafts I've seen from them, where they have, a strong, reliable top laner. They have, one of the top 3 junglers. They have Orianna mid, who's absolutely disgusting, and nobody seems to pick her for some reason.
It's a fantastic comp.
Yeah, like this is amazing, and they just executed it perfectly. And there's not a whole lot of tools on the other side to really combat this draft once it gets going.
Don't worry, Doctor. We'll get to the Orianna mid, but before we do, we've just talked about every game in mid league except for the one that was actually streamed, and you were casting that one, Doctor. So I know, on one hand, you may be a little tired of talking about it, but on the other hand, you are definitely an expert in the Glaive Black 2-0 versus Glacial Rising Phoenix. We touched upon this earlier, but let's talk about that game for a little bit, or not just that game, but a little bit both games.
Ooh, this is disgusting.
I notice across both of them, Glacial Rising Phoenix dies a lot. I mean, right? Like, even in the other games where we see teams lose and lose somewhat decidedly, I feel like no one dies quite so much as Glacial Rising Phoenix. Can you tell me about that?
So this series particularly, I think there were some very interesting draft choices from Rising Phoenix. I mean, you can look at game 1 and they have Aatrox, Mundo, Cass, and one of the best spot lines out there in Cassiopeia Morgana. Caitlyn Morgana.
Caitlyn Morgana.
Yeah, and like that's in and of itself a disgusting lane. But when you look at the top half of the map, Aatrox was last pick, if I remember correctly. And so when we were talking about the game, we're like, all right, they have Mundo jungle. It's not really a thing, but it can work. He's got decent clear. He can just be unstoppable tank form. All right, I can see reasons for it. The Cassiopeia, one of the more played champions from their mid laner, if I remember again correctly. So we're like, all right, you can make that work. Got counterpicked by the Vigar, and I was like, okay, it's an okay lane, but it's not exactly amazing. Vigar will spike quicker, in my opinion, and do that. And Aatrox is their absolute last pick red side into the composition you can see here of Malphite, Heck, Vigar, Ezreal, Thresh, and we're like, why? Like, there's so many other picks available out there, and a lot of it was Rising Phoenix would full sail commit to fights, and what that would mean is that they would get caught out a lot in like an individual sense and full commit, and then it would just be that the team that spiked quicker had more items, had more damage, had more survivability, and was able to win these very close skirmishes until they weren't close.
Now, you mentioned that Glacial Rising Phoenix still managed to do poorly and, mind you, lose lane when they had the Caitlyn Morgana into an Ezreal Thresh. Now,
the Thresh was nutty.
I was reviewing.
Disgusting.
Okay, so props to that. And let's be clear here, right? There is counterplay to Morgana for Thresh. It is not fun, but it's not a complete shutdown counter the way a lot of Threshes in solo queue like to pretend it is. Now, that being said, it should have been particularly difficult because this was a Caitlyn Morgana lane. And when I think of that lane, I think of the way that I want to play it in solo and duo queue, which is, unless I am just absolutely terrified of the enemy jungler and I think I'm getting camped or whatnot, I am going to use Morgana pool because, support main here, right? I'm going to be the one on the Morgana. I'm going to be using Morgana pool to push the wave, right? As Caitlyn Morgana, I just want to shove the wave into their faces, exert a lot of pressure, and especially as a squishier mage type, enchanter type champion into a hook champ. What I really like is, especially, right, the danger that I open up is getting ganked. But if I'm not worried about getting ganked, if I trust in my vision, if I trust that the jungler does not care about my lane, I'm going to love to be pushed up because that's going to give me more space to maneuver within the lane laterally, and that is going to decrease the amount of space, especially bush space, that the hook champion has to utilize to try to land a hook. So
100%.
So that's what I'm going to want to do. And I saw the draft
instead.
Yeah, they
So
let
Issei-
Ezreal Thresh push. Why did they do this?
Let me tell you about Issei's first 3 minutes of the game. So they leash red buff for the jungler. Makes sense. Issei then paths up through Red River entrance to Pixel Bush, finds Cassiopeia warding River Bush, flays him back, and gets a kill for Veigar. All right, pretty good start. Walks bottom lane. Kate Morgana hits level 2 first. Ezreal Thresh hits level 2, and Issei just walks up and hook flays Morgana, and they kill her too. And I think they also kill the Caitlyn for a double kill, and this is all pre 3 minutes. So Issei is feeling pretty good about this matchup at that point, and your plan of trying to push through, Issei just doesn't care. He'll just run through minions and kill you.
It is Thresh.
Yeah.
Thresh is really good at putting the pressure down if you're not ready for it. And I think it's one of my favorite things to see in Fear in solo queue when I play against it. It's the lack of respect I give a Thresh, and then the Thresh absolutely swats me like a fly.
Yeah, and it's deserved. But it's funny because like when we were talking to Issei and Kiba after the game, we were like, why did you gank mid at level 1? Like what thought process is that? And they're like, oh well, we did our research and we know that the enemy mid laner likes to ward a little bit earlier when they know they're starting that side, and I just took advantage of that. And I was like, all right, cool, that's show research.
That's
you're
freaking
doing
rad.
Yeah, like that's
That's
insane.
so big brain.
See,
And then I
we
was
see
like-
Lave Black really doing their homework here. That's impressive.
Yeah, and then I'm like, all right, so you got the kill there. Why did you immediately go in at level 2 into Caitlyn Morgana? And he's like, I thought we were better. He's just like straight up was like, we were the better bot lane, and so we killed them.
Skill check him.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, yeah, that worked out for you, didn't it?
Hey man, if you can pass the vibe check, which they cannot,
Yeah,
it works out.
and I mean, had that gone wrong, the lane's incredibly difficult at that point because Kate Morgana then does exactly what Indubitably was saying, where you just shove lane, take away the bush, and just kill them. But because the Thresh Ezreal was so far ahead at that point, Morgana being as squishy as she is, which doesn't always feel that way, was just under constant siege. And because you're getting level advantages on the Thresh, you're being able to use the Flay and stuff to break that black shield a little bit quicker, and it just becomes so much harder to try and play that defensive style that an even team would have to play, because you're not even. Thresh is smoking you.
Right. I was doing my prep to record this, right? And I actually did watch a lot of the times I am not available to watch Mid-League live, but I was this week, and I watched it live this week. And when I was going back to review the VOD after looking at the stats, I was like, oh, right, that was this game. That was, there was, I don't remember who made the joke. If it's you, Doctor, shame, about Kiba putting names in his book.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
Of course it's me.
No.
Hey, it worked
Oh,
out.
boy.
You went 9-1-2.
The follow-up with the all according to Keikaku, translator's note, Keikaku means plan. I kind of hate you for that because I refuse to admit how often I say that while playing League of Legends.
Yeah,
Now,
I mean, it worked out. What else
Weird.
can you say?
you know,
I just slash mute all and Willow and my self-pity.
I was looking at the team comps and I was trying to figure out how on earth Caitlyn Morgana did so poorly, and I saw a Hecarim on the side of Glaive Black, and I thought to myself, oh, that must be it. Before they really managed to secure anything, well, the Hecarim must have just run them over. No, that's not what happened at all. No, Glaive Black just won the 2v2. I mean, heck, they won an early 2v3, right? Mundo came to gank for bot. That was the opposite of what I was thinking was going to happen. I did not think I thought if Mundo showed up bot early, it would be a very disappointing sort of show.
And it was.
No.
It's exactly what happened. Is Mundo showed up bot, and it was disappointing because Ezreal just arcane shifts away, and then the death sentence flay comes in, and you forget your level 5 Mundo, who feels sometimes like they have a Sona health pool, and it just continued going downwards from that point.
Right. I was expecting, Mundo to throw a cleaver and then back out. But no, Mundo gave over an extra kill to the Ezreal, which is not what you want to see. However, despite the fact that the Glaive Black bot lane lead did not come from the Hecarim spam ganking them, it seems that Glacial Rising Phoenix looked at Glaive Black's Hecarim and said, ooh, that good jungle. We want that jungle. Because they took the Hecarim next game. In a move that to me very much looked like they said, Hecarim's clearly OP. I just saw you play it. It's too strong. I want it now. And then they lost on it.
Hecarim, to me, is a bait champion. And I recognize the strengths that the champion has, and I just don't agree with when teams try and plug and play it. You need to build around Hecarim in a certain way. I'm not saying make him your carry, but you need to have reasonable lane expectations to make it really work. And the composition they ended up with in game 2 with the Hecarim doesn't really encapsulate what you would need from the Hecarim. If you look at the lane assignments in the top side, Zephyr's favorite champion, Shen, is obviously going to win over Ornn, and Hecarim can't really do much about that because you can... what the heck's the Shen W? Twilight Shroud? No.
No, Spirit Refuge.
Spirit Refuge, there we go. Blocks out the Hecarim charge attack damage because it blocks all modifiers. It can block the Ornn Brittle proc as well, and so you can't do anything there. Mid lane, Akali into LeBlanc. LeBlanc's just going to distortion away. Bot lane, Samira Pantheon just dumpstered on Alistar, who couldn't get away. And I will... Oh, wait, no, that's not the Samira lane. I'm thinking of Samira Rakan, which is disgusting in its own right. But the Pantheon, you can see a 6-0 and 11 scoreline, and Pantheon does damage. It's a problem.
All right, then. Now, we've been talking about mid-league a good chunk today, which I'm glad to see because sometimes we kind of try to rush through it to make up time. But that being said...
Yet, though.
Let's
What's the predictions for next week?
Yes, let's give our final thoughts and predictions on mid league before moving on to heavy league. So, for the me who did not pull up yet.
So we have Glaive Black versus Catalyst Blaze, Glacial Rising Phoenix versus Catalyst Frost, the South Dakota Coyotes versus Drift, Dag Scarlet versus Goliath Online. So it should be Glaive Black, Frost. I think Coyotes versus Drift should be an extremely close matchup, but I think Drift should pull it out ahead there. And then Dag Scarlet, Goliath Online, I think will be also very interesting to watch, considering we just saw Goliath take it, 2-1 over Drift, and Scarlet had a bit of trouble with Catalyst Frost. So these two teams are a little bit more even in the standings, which are Glaive, Frost, Blaze, Scarlet, Goliath, Drift, Rising Phoenix, and then the Coyotes in that order.
Rad.
All right, Zephyr.
I
think
agree.
this. But I think this week should have less 2-0s than the last 2 weeks.
Oh, man.
So Black and Frost are gonna 2-0. The other three, I could be persuaded. Or sorry, the other two, I could be persuaded to go to 3 games.
All right. Well, it has been a while since, or maybe perhaps we haven't ever seen more than 1 3-game set a week in mid. Is that right?
I believe that's correct. I can go back through so that's one. So week 1 we had 2 series go to 3 games.
All right, so it's been since week 1 that
we've had.
All right.
Yeah. So this would be week 5 we're heading into. So I mean it's getting there, and I think this would be the week to also get 2 3-game series. But I think Glaive Black has just been playing at such a level that I'm not sure who would contest them at this point. And then we also have Frost, who's been playing pretty well as well. So I think they should get the 2-0 over Glitch Rising Phoenix, who just got 2-0'd by Glaive Black anyway. And so those 2 teams should stay at the top, tied almost for first. I don't actually know how to read this standings post, to be honest with you. I'm not really good at reading.
Well, there are numbers and there's letters. And
yeah, but they have the same amount of points.
To wins.
Zephyr, they both
losses.
have 4 points. Glaive Black has a number 1 next to it with 4 points, and Catalyst Frost has a number 2 next to it with also 4 points.
Well, I can't do math either.
Yeah, I know. That's why we're here talking about video games instead of doing math-related stuff.
I'm actually a G in math. You wouldn't believe it, but I'm super good.
Okay, so I think before Zephyr's mental state deteriorates any further, we should move on to Heavy League so we can have him start engaging that supposedly big brain of his. All right, Zephyr, Heavy League. All right, well, this was not the streamed game, but CGC 2-0'd again. What else is new?
Yeah, but it was against Anarchy, and that's sad.
It was against Anarchy. That is sad.
I talked to them afterwards, and I will say this. While CGC did, CGC things and kicked butt once again. Woohoo, haven't seen that one before. But Anarchy let me know that they have a plan that they're willing to enact onto CGC in the future here in playoffs. Thing is, they're not comfortable enough with it yet. They know it's going to capitalize on whatever CGC's weakness is. And they said we just weren't ready to pull it off going into this week specifically. We weren't ready, so we held off and we just tried to beat them classically. They obviously didn't work out, but they said we've got an idea. We're going to run with it into the playoffs. So I could care less about how this game went, especially knowing that they have something completely else in the mix here for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know what it is though. They didn't reveal it to me.
They didn't tell you.
They're keeping a hush hush on me.
I was going to ask you if they told you what that is. Now, since you don't know, that means I can ask you without fear of revealing anything. But can you tell me what you think will work? What is CGC's weakness?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. We have not covered CGC yet on the official stream, I'm pretty sure. And as a result, my research on them has been quite low compared to every other team. I've done heavy in-depth research on all 7 teams except for CGC because we have yet to broadcast them.
Didn't we see CGC week 1?
Did we?
I think we
CGC
did.
versus Booyah Exiles week 1? I don't think so. week one we saw FGCU versus YO Boomers.
Oh, you're right. We did.
We haven't seen
That's
CGC
true.
yet, and thank God, because thus far they are just cracking coconuts over here, and I'm not a fan of it because
You
I
don't
think
like
that's
coconut?
boring. No, I freaking love coconut. Last night I had so many almond joys. For people who are wondering, last night was Halloween, so candy is at an all-time high for Zephyr, and almond joys are
Disgusting.
so good. They're not my favorite candy, but they are coconut.
All right.
I can't give you that answer because I haven't quite really looked into CGC yet. All I can tell you is that to me right now they seem kind of monstrous.
All right. One of the things I will shout out about the monstrous CGC right here is something that is near and dear to my heart as a Bard lover. That they played Bard with a variant on one of the plenty of funny builds for Bard. They had a Dead Man's and there was a Kirch's Shard, probably building into that rapid fire cannon that Bards like to build sometimes before the end of the game. Now, I love this build. It's so funny.
They get to do whatever they want.
Once upon a time, before the Dead Man's was so popular, one of the things that you used to see built on Bard a lot, and that I personally built on Bard a lot because it was super fun, you would want to build a proto belt rapid fire on Bard. And so you'd start by getting your Hextech Revolver, and then you get your Kirch's Shard before upgrading anything else. And then just those two half items would have you deal a silly amount of damage. And it was just so funny. Now,
as an AD carry player, I find Bard so annoying. But
I think he's cool.
90% of my annoyance with Bard is the way his Q works, because
I love it. That's so fun though.
It's that
second stun.
Yeah, but the second portion of it connects to like the world.
Yes.
Like people always complain about like Nautilus hook being lollipopped at the end. Bard's way worse. I would rather play into Nautilus every time than Bard.
I love Bard
because of the interaction there.
Bard is so fantastic. As a matter of fact, so I have the Bard club tag, which is why I'm so sad that club tags are going away at the end of this season. But I was playing a normal game, and my ADC also had the Bard club tag, and it was one of the people I sort of recognized from the Bard club chat. And I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to play Bard for you. And level 1, the enemy Pyke walked up to try to execute a minion, and I got what Pyke declared to have been a very BS double stun on him and his ADC, and we got a double kill. And that whole game, we lost that game overall, but I was more than thrilled to be able to show off insane Bard things to my fellow Bard friend,
I will say
which was
Pyke
very
is
exciting.
Definitely more annoying than Bard.
Right? I hate Pyke. So Pyke's all chatting me about like, your champion's so broken, that's why I permaban him. And I'm like, funny, I feel the same about your champion. But anyhow, moving on from Bard things, earlier in our mid-segment, Doctor said, Orianna's a great champion right now. Why aren't people picking her more? Well, guess what? They are in Heavy League this week. 7 out of 10 games, that's a 70% pick rate, not pick ban rate, pick rate of Orianna.
Pick ban. Do you know that?
I did not look that up.
We
should look at it. We should look up the pick ban rate. I didn't look at the games that didn't feature an Orianna. I'm not sure. I think I was looking at the match history that didn't show me the bans. But one of the things I can tell you is out of those 7 games where Orianna was picked, only one of them saw the team that had the Orianna lose.
Orianna's broken.
So you're telling me 6 out of the 7 games she won?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so good. I've been a large proponent of Orianna forever, pretty much. Like, she's my solo queue pick when I play mid lane and I want to climb because she's free low. Like, when it comes to competitive playing, I think that for the large portion of teams here, we should see them pick a tank for their top laners a lot of the time, whether it's like Ornn or Scion or Maokai or something like that. And if you want to go fighter top, you should pick tank jungle, whether it's Sejuani or just pick Sejuani. She's also broken. and then yeah, and then you just pick Orianna mid, and you in those two picks effectively win team fights. You can pick whatever you want to keep your marksman safe. You can pick again the support to keep your marksman safe, and just that tank Orianna combo does so much for a lot of teams. And what's crazy is that everybody knows this. Everybody knows that Orianna tank is strong, and they know how to play into it and with it, and it still just works because it's so simple. It's just press R, do damage, win team fight.
At a certain point, you can't avoid it. It is always going to come through full strength, full power, whether you like it or not. And if you're behind as Orianna, it doesn't matter. Shockwave is such a crucial and just destructive force in terms of displacement and just making team fights work out for the better. It just works. Dude, just pick Orianna, which they are. And they're winning with it.
It's so easy to blind, too. Like, when you want to come to draft phase, Orianna gives you so much leeway, because if if you're going round 3 and you're like, well, we need a mid laner because we've either been banned or picked away, or we don't want to show our top lane yet because they will counter it super hard, or if you're just afraid of any counter picks, just pick Orianna. Like, there are counters, but her counters are all garbage right now, and she's so strong that she just farms into oblivion and presses R. Like, it gives you so much leeway in draft, in game, and I think every mid lane player can play her because she's also pretty just brain dead.
Well, that's a message to everyone in mid league and heavy league. If you have not picked Orianna yet to win your game, might start thinking about it. Coyote, I'm just saying. Simple win strong. Go for it.
All right, so keep picking Orianna. Start picking Orianna if you haven't already. That's at mid league right there.
Wow,
that's it.
We should be coaches.
Wow, imagine.
TSM lost, dude. How you feeling?
Yeah, TSM lost because they didn't pick Orianna.
Wait, they did.
Well,
I don't want to
let's not talk about that. So now, one of the things I will say is that, a 70% pick rate this week in Heavy League is
pretty
insane.
Nutty.
It's a lot of Orianna. And I wound up looking just back a week thinking, like, I don't think they were picking Orianna this much last week. And they weren't. I mean, they were picking Orianna, but they weren't picking Orianna that consistently. Can someone explain to me what this spike in popularity is being attributed by? Like,
simple. They grew brain cells. All right, move
on. Fantastic. They grew brain cells. They saw it played in Worlds enough.
Yeah,
like,
she hasn't been nerfed.
Yeah.
All right, so let's chalk it up to the.
Well, all right. So I guess if we really, all right. So if we want a real answer, like, Orianna herself hasn't changed. Like, she's been this way forever.
What has, though?
The only thing I can think of that has changed is we're starting to see a lot of tanks and bruisers again in the top side instead of like duelists, and so we're still seeing like Camille Fiora, obviously, shout outs to Ben, but like when it comes to the grand scheme of things, we're resulting to Ornn, who again just broken. Like, there's no other word for Ornn than broken, and we're not seeing like Ornn counters, right? Like, we see Mordekaiser, but we're not seeing Fiora, Camille, or I don't know, some other crazy stupid split pusher. And so Orianna does like Trundle. Like, hell, we don't see Trundle, right? Like, Trundle could do
this week. They did.
Yeah, Trundle could do very well. But like, so Orianna is so safe in the mid lane and gives you so many more options to counterpick for your other lanes, that comboed with just in-game stats of tanks being super strong and allowing for essentially free shockwaves onto priority targets, that her stock rises because the rest of the game changed. All
right. Well, moving on, I do want to shout out the FGCU YO Boomer series. And I know we've talked plenty about FGCU and YO Boomers. But first of all, Zephyr, there is something I want you to answer for, and that is the game that YO Boomers took off of FGCU. Now, Zephyr has long been a proponent of the FGCU AD carry Thomas as one of their primary carries in win conditions. And yet I just saw Thomas do less damage on Vayne than YO Boomer's Braum.
Yeah, they picked Vayne though.
They picked Vayne.
I'm sorry,
what were they doing?
Vayne's an incredibly... Or, okay, if we look at their comp here, especially having Hecarim, Orianna, and Aphelios right off the bat, I don't think Vayne is your best bet into this. And if you go back and you look at ban-wise, too, you're taking off Caitlyn and Ashe already off the table, which they banned themselves, which I thought was kind of crazy. I don't think Vayne is the best option they could have run with here currently, because I just don't think Vayne is in a great state as a whole. So I wasn't surprised in any which way seeing them lose off of that matchup.
Right. I did see draft there, and I thought, why were you trolling Champ Select?
Well, there was a lot of trolling going on in that second game, in my opinion, from FGCU. They definitely played to a level that was not consistent with how they usually perform. I also think their comp was not of the best. I see what they were trying to run with, but in terms of the time period that it takes to get that comp rolling in comparison to the time period and window that is allowed for YO Boomers, especially since you do have early game potential to come through and activate at a much quicker pace in comparison to getting a Karthus online, getting an Orin online, getting a Vayne, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I don't like this.
It's not why are you playing around that window?
I don't see bans, obviously. But so like Ornn pick, great, love it. Taric pick, great, love it. Echo needs some setup. I've seen Echoes pop off. There's better options. Karthus jungle, it's been nerfed quite a bit. Into Hecarim, you're gonna get exploded every time. You simply do not have the time. Again, there are better picks. And Vayne, she's not feeling so great because even though her spike is much quicker than it used to be, because you can go Blade of the Ruined King Ginsus, it's still not that fast. And I mean, I think if you want a hyper scaling carry that's a tank buster right now, I think the play is Kai'Sa, who right now you can get away with a bunch of different build paths because it's Kai'Sa and she's strong. I mean, hell, you could even go the new Serrated Dirk build that gets you all three, evolutions by like, I think it's 24 minutes. And all of a sudden you're super strong. So I think the early game from blue side is very strong, and there wasn't an answer to any of that from red.
Mind you, nothing happened bot lane until roughly like 12 minutes into the game. And at that point, YO Boomers had already found a lot of sustainable kills on the entire top side of the map. And then they just transformed that and collapsed bot lane. So you're already shutting down a window that is not even completely finished or closed here for Vayne. And that just puts Palmgo so far behind.
Yeah, I mean, was Syndra banned? Do you know?
No, Syndra was not banned. That was still available.
Just pick Syndra. Why are you picking a mid lane assassin? Just pick Syndra.
Did they even... I'm just curious. Yeah, I was about to say, they played Syndra in their first game.
All right. Well, you know what? FGCU was, in fact, able to afford trolling game 2 because
they came back.
they took things to game 3. They took the 2-1 victory. And big mistake, in my opinion, on the side of YO Boomers is that they let Rabadon back onto his Rumble. That Rabadon outputted an impressive 27k damage in that game. No. As much as Zephyr is a proponent of Thomas, I am a proponent of Rabadon. I think Rabadon is a massive credit to his team.
I've seen this Rumble a couple times, and it's pretty disgusting because in a world where like we're seeing like these really big split push / team fight compositions, you would think Rumble top would be pretty decent, but he gets blown up by pretty much everybody up there. So to rotate it mid lane's pretty big brains, and it works. Like I've seen it a couple times now, and every time I'm just like, why? And then he makes it work. So I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know, man. It's crazy. No, man. I've seen him play it before, and even in the games he's lost with it, which we have seen literally, it still performs pretty adequately, and it's still something that you have to respect and manage. So, yeah, good job, man. You're FGCU. You're still not looking too hot right now, though. That's all I'm gonna say to him.
I mean, this game 3 here, just looking across the board, looks pretty disgusting. And I mean, they just won early, it would seem. Except when you then look at the gold graph and everything, the first like big series of events that actually matters is at 12 minutes. So I mean, we're right now, that's like mid game, right? When games are ending by like 36 minutes, I would say 12 minutes is almost mid game per se. But like they win a big team fight, they get a dragon, they get some more kills, and then it just explodes from there because they have Rumble, GP, Nidalee.
Dude, but
Lucian, I guess.
Okay. All I'm gonna say is that FGCU is easily the third worst team in the Heavy League right now. With no question, I can confirm that with like full confidence.
I'm not talking about the league. I'm just talking about this game.
I don't.
Okay,
There's
Zephyr.
a narrative.
Now, Zephyr, you are saying that that's all you'll say about it. Are you sure we can't convince you to say more about it?
I'm not done.
Okay.
This
Okay,
is
Zephyr.
Boomers. This is YO Boomers. In no way should it be this much of a struggle, and that your win condition should be shut off across the board at any given point to that you give a game to YO. Mizzou is a team that surprisingly finds a random game here and then. YO is not. For that to come through, you're not proving yourself as a top talent that is going to be contestable against these other teams. Especially when we look at the performance of guys like Vlad and Booyah and Anarchy. Even though they face, heavier defeats, it's because they're playing raised games here against some of the higher elo teams in my eyes. FGCU, if they're looking to find success going into playoffs, which we are slowly getting closer and closer to, need to find a general strength across the board, or else you can't just keep relying on one area, or else you're gonna lose out here. I feel like they're gonna make the cut for being that last 6th seed, because I really have no hope here for YO or Mizzou at this point, unless they get very, very lucky. But like Christ, Mizzou next week is literally playing, I think, CGC, so that's not happening. Sorry, buds. That's a 2-0. Just try to make it last longer than 20 minutes like any other team. Dude, all I'm saying is like, FGCU going to playoffs, gotta work on some schnizness. All right, baby boys, love you. I'm not being mean.
right.
I'm just being honest.
All right, Zephyr, any
As
other
everybody
thoughts
says.
on Heavy League before we move on?
Sure. Lotus versus Vladimir's only was really fun to cast and watch and whatnot. Lotus proved themselves to me, which I was the only caster analyst to pick them winning. So everyone else sucks and I'm the king. And Lotus proved it. I drew a really cool monk. And if you guys aren't watching the pre-shows, then you're sleeping, because we dressed up like D&D characters with cloaks and stuff and did like a D&D pre-show. So
I did see that. As someone who plays a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
I heard you, Doctor.
I was actually playing Dungeons and Dragons like right before we recorded this.
We have a fun one next week. It's a game show, so you should come watch it.
Oh no, D&D,
like Jeopardy style or like Wheel of Fortune?
Like Kahoot.
I don't know what that is.
Oh,
boy, you are old.
You know what? Just consider yourself blessed, okay? Just don't worry about it, Doctor. Don't worry about it.
Kahoot is a great game. It's
no, Kahoot's you do it because it's there.
Quite. That's because you're stupid.
Anyways.
Well, that is mean.
Video game.
But if you would win Kahoot, you would know how good it feels.
Is a game-based learning platform used as educational technology in schools and other educational institutions.
All right, is in fact
listen, when I was in like elementary school, which is I'm imagining where
we used
you
to
play
beat
this.
each other with pencils.
No, that was
use
middle
this...
school. In elementary school, we had those big, colorful Mac computers. If you know those boomers out there, remember where they were all different colors and like kind of see through, and we used floppy disks even. So yeah, I guess I am kind of old. Holy
God,
shit.
I remember seeing floppy disks, but I never remember using them myself. I think they were
a floppy
phased
disk
out.
is what the save
I know what a
button
floppy
is.
disk is. But
We
what the
know
hell?
what a floppy... Listen.
Crazy. Predictions for next week before we move on to QuiteIndubitably's interview. Next week we got Mizzou versus CGC. Mizzou, God rest your soul. Try to pull a game off and everyone will praise you, but the 2-0 is most likely inevitable. Booyah versus Vlad Banners only, which is going to be, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Booyah takes that, and that's going to be pretty controversial, but Booyah 2-1. Anarchy versus Wyo. Anarchy, do me proud. I know you're coming off a very bad week in many ways, more than one. But I hope you guys can find success going into Wyo Boomers. But I wouldn't be surprised if y'all lost. So I'm going to put it a 2-1 for them. And then FGC versus Thunderbirds versus Lotus. That should be an easy Lotus victory. Okay, there you go.
All right.
There wasn't much heavy
easy
league today.
You know what? That's fine because we've already spent plenty of time talking about this. It is time for me to move on to the theoretically right after this, but well, yeah, kind of right after this.
Sort of.
Anyhow, I'll be interviewing in recompense for underestimating Lotus. I will be interviewing Lotus's mid laner JVL and talking to him a bit. A little bit about his team, a lot of bit about what the heck he do when he's not clearly making me look like a fool. So, that being said, roll the clip. All right, hello everyone. I'm your host, QuiteIndubitably, here to interview JVL from Lotus, who is their mid laner. Now, notably, I did quite erroneously predict that Lotus would lose this week, and they decided to prove me wrong and tweet about it. So, JVL, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm JVL, the mid laner for Lotus. You can also call me John. Either one works for me. But yeah, I have to say we were a little disappointed when we saw the tweet or when we saw the podcast and we saw the downplay, of our team. But I think that also is something that kind of gives us a little bit more, more what's the word? More drive, in a way. We want to be able to prove, because we are a newer team coming into the league. We kind of want to be able to prove ourselves in that way.
The second I saw the reply on Twitter, I thought to myself, oh no, they believe in themselves enough to tweet about it. I'm in trouble. Now, notably, did you do Worlds Pick'ems?
Yeah, I did do Worlds Pick'ems. Not to my greatest Worlds Pick'ems ever, but yeah.
Okay, well, let me put it one way. I had G2 winning Worlds.
Okay, I mean...
Let me put it another way. My Pick'em score was Caster Minion.
Okay, I'm assuming that's on the lower end, so...
I'm assuming that's on the lower end, too.
Yeah,
I think, I was talking with my friends about this. I think, technically, there is a rank lower called Poro, but that makes zero sense, because Poro should... It should be the best, right? Like,
yeah,
we all love
right.
Poros. Like, Poro's power level is definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're thinking in making Poro the least, if that's the case. But, when we play in game and someone's useless, I'm used to being like, oh, you're a caster minion, so...
Yeah, that is extremely disrespectful by Riot Games to put Poros so far down on the list like that. I'm quite disappointed.
That needs a rehaul, clearly.
Yeah.
My friends are out here as Krugs, and, Honestly, I kind of like the caster minion better, even though that means I did significantly worse in pick'ems. Now, John, I understand that you, like so many of us on the amateur scene, are a student. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that and why
Yeah.
you choose to spend your studying time playing League of Legends?
Yeah, so student or not, I think League has just a big impact on my life, especially at the moment, with quarantine and everything, a lot of the time being spent inside on the computer. But yeah, currently I study business management. I'm going to community college right now. I plan on transferring next fall and graduating with a major in business management and a minor in psychology. And then around that time, I think I'm going to decide whether or not I want to pursue law afterwards for my career. But I've always been interested in pursuing business as a career path, and psychology has been something that interests me more on a personal level. So that is why I chose to pursue that as well.
All right, so, law school is something that I know just a little bit about. It is not something I ever want to go to myself, but we did just ship my brother off to law school. He's been doing that. He has already spent plenty of time learning to be about as insufferable to me as possible. He is a Teemo main.
Yeah, I mean, Teemo main, my brother's a Nasus main, so I mean they're already arch enemies there.
Right.
Teemo and Nasus just don't get along, but
Good old Susan. The only good thing, this is okay. So the only good thing about Nasus is that you can call him Susan, which I think is one of the best two names that you can call a champion in your games, right? There is calling Nasus Susan, which of course is perfection, and I personally enjoy calling Amumu Mr. Mummy Man.
okay, that's a new one. Triple M, Mr. Mummy
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it takes a lot longer to type out, but I think
Yeah.
it's worth it.
Okay, I'll have to keep that one in the back of my head just in
Yeah.
case.
Amumu ganks your lane, you're like, thanks, Mr. Mummy Man.
Yeah, of course. Much easier to say, much quicker.
You gotta spend your time thanking your jungler for ganking you, which is something that you don't seem to have a lot of experience with, because your team seems to just sort of ignore you, leave you alone to your own devices, and, go give all of their love to the bot lane. So, how's that going?
Yeah, I think it's definitely stems from having a team identity and knowing where our resources need to go. I definitely think that Katsuki, shout out Katsuki, I love my jungle. I definitely think he comes mid when I ask, when I need it. But besides that, we kind of, we get me on a decent matchup. Um, because I have a pretty deep champion pool, there's never really a time where we're just on an absolutely losing matchup mid and it comes back to bite us in the end. So I think as long as I'm on an okay matchup mid, I can kind of pilot the lane from there and we can use our resources across the map more effectively.
And does it truly not weaken your mental? I mean, is this something that you deal with? Are you able to deal with this in solo queue as well, with your jungler never coming mid? Is it okay being that lonely?
It does get to me sometimes. I'm human. I can only withstand so much loneliness in the mid lane. But I think one of the key things that I try to focus on is playing good fundamentals of the game. So whether I get my jungler ganking me or the enemy jungler ganking me or all these things that you can't really account for game to game, I think that as long as I'm focusing on playing good fundamentals and playing the matchup or whatever scenario it is, how it should be played to the best of my ability, then I think it's good in the end.
Right. You had this play this week where, I think there's a Twitch clip of it floating around Twitter calling you Twinkle Toes or something like that, where you just practically dance around this 1v1 in the mid lane and come out on top. talk about good fundamentals. That's the sort of thing where, I see those plays, and of course, mechanically skilled players do sometimes pull off plays like that, and it's great, and you get to save it for your highlight reel. But, in terms of fundamentals, not only does that engage your mechanics, but I think that has a lot to do with your ability to focus through that fight, envision exactly what you want to be doing and where you want to be. And you can do this after being alone all game, except for sometimes when the enemy jungler comes, of course. Gosh, that's a lot of focus to have.
I think you definitely hit the nail on the head when you said something like trying to envision what it's going to look like, how the fight's going to play out. What abilities do I need to dodge? How do I need to position for this? Whether it be a 1v1 in the mid lane or a team fight by the dragon, or anything like that, 2v2 in the jungle. I think it also helps that I am such a competitive person that when it comes to game day or we're on broadcast or something like that, I think that it elevates my play to some extent. So yeah.
Right, and envisioning a fight does very much seem to be your thing. I believe you've told me that you are something of the primary shot caller on your team once your game transitions to sort of that mid-game, late-game stage, and your jungler stops being as prominent a voice as is standard.
Yeah, so early game, Katsuki, my jungler, definitely the most prominent voice as far as what his pathing is going to be, tracking the enemy jungler early, kind of what his plan is, what our plan is as a team early, where our resources are going to go. And as we transition, kind of like you said, into the mid game, late game, where we're doing calls around maybe major objectives or lane allocation or something of the sort, I think that my voice is more prominent. I definitely think that we still have multiple voices on the team to provide their input in what should happen, but I think it comes very easy for me to be kind of the loud, like assertive last call on some of the plays. Yeah.
Now, how did you get into League of Legends originally?
Yeah, so I originally started out playing Call of Duty on the Xbox 360. And then I had a friend that was, talking up Minecraft, talking all about it when I was younger. So I was like, okay, I got to try this game out. And I started playing Minecraft with him. And a few months later, he's like, hey, we should play League. And that's kind of how I was first introduced to the game. And then, playing some bot games here and there. But yeah, it's pretty early on.
Right, there is that early slog of bot games. When I try to describe how long I've been playing League of Legends, I kind of ignore the bot game phase, because that is a phase where I didn't know what I was doing. I had a computer actually that would constantly overheat trying to play League of Legends. I got into so many low priority queues off of that. And heck, I used League as my barometer of, have I fixed my computer problems yet?
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I figured out certain tricks to keep my laptop from just completely shutting down on me that I could even start playing against real people. So I kind of start the clock there.
It's actually funny that you mentioned the bot games, because my friends who first introduced me to the game told me strictly only play bot games, do not play normal games, like you want to practice. And I didn't play a normal game until about like level 20-ish or level 25. And this is back in the early stages of League, where it took a long time to level up to that point. So I played a lot of bot games before I ever played any PvP matches. And I still vividly remember the first match I ever played of Tryndamere, and killing the enemy and being like, oh my god, like, I'm not killing an AI, this is an actual person. But yeah.
I spent a lot of time when I was on the cusp of graduating from bot games fearing actual people. Oh no, like they're going to be so good, they're going to want to win. My mechanics are famously horrible. So, one of the reasons I sit here oohing and ahhing over outplays is, I see that and I know that's not me. I know that's never going to be me. And one of the reasons is that even if I am so lucky as to be accurate enough, I'm gonna freak out like halfway through the fight. I'm going to absolutely freak out. Now, you say you were playing Call of Duty on Xbox,
Mhm.
and then, your friend convinced you to switch over to PC. Are you basically a PC gamer now? Have you
Oh,
ever gone back to console?
I've never gone back to a console ever since the Switch from way back when. I've played friends' consoles or whatever it may be, but I've never owned another console since the Xbox 360. So yeah, that was kind of the death of console for me.
PC is the greatest console
Yeah.
after all. Now, I understand you play a lot of Dark Souls.
I recently my friend actually bought me Dark Souls 3 and kind of was like, "Hey, like play this with me, introduce me to it." And I found it's very fun to play, casually because I'm so serious about League and, I'm always so like focused when I'm playing or talking about the game. Dark Souls is kind of a really fun like switch up for me where I can kind of just not really think that much and just yell at the game for dying.
I love how your reaction to Dark Souls is, this is the
Yeah.
game where I relax and
Yeah,
take
yeah.
it easy.
It is a little funny when you put it like that, I suppose.
I mean, we literally have lexicon built up about how any game or endeavor is the Dark Souls of
Yeah.
XYZ because Dark Souls is infamous for being difficult and punishing.
I definitely do not consider myself good at the game whatsoever. I shout out to Cameron, my friend, introduced me to the game, helping me out along the way. Could not be doing it without him, but yeah, it's kind of a fun switch up for me. Yeah.
I do not play Dark Souls myself because I told you I am not mechanical at all. I would probably shorten my lifespan by about 2 decades or so from the stress of trying to play Dark Souls, just constantly being on edge. I love how you say you shut your brain off for Dark Souls because that is not what most people do when they play Dark Souls. Like, unless they already looked up like the most cheater way to kite out a certain enemy, right? The whole point of a lot of Dark Souls design is supposed to be, there's a solution there, you just have to find it
Yeah.
and not be a dum-dum, and also, like, spot enemies from
It's
vistas.
it's definitely a mixture of my friend being a super veteran at the game and knowing all the ins and outs, and also me just trial and error. Like maybe I'll die 10 times at the first boss, but I'll get through it eventually, and then from there.
Right, there is, at the very least, you can learn each combat encounter, and the way that, I mean, you can't directly in League of Legends. The best you can do is, learn how this type of fight tends to play out, which becomes a little more cut and dry in like a 1v1 or whatnot, but there's always going to be, which way is this player going to dodge? What are they going to try to do to fake you out or misdirect you? So in that sense, I suppose you can turn your brain off and brute force Dark Souls.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I would argue that you're probably relying on a good mechanical basis in taking this approach.
Okay, decent.
Now this is an argument from someone who, in basically all other games that I play, I refuse to play anything that requires any level of mechanics whatsoever. It is turn-based RPGs for me because I only have so much bandwidth to prescribe to mechanics, and unfortunately, all of that bandwidth has to go to League of Legends.
Yeah, see, for me, it's kind of the opposite. The turn-based games, not really my style. But any game where mechanics were the main focus, like for example, Super Smash Bros. Melee, super popular, like old school kind of competitive game, where the mechanics are literally everything in the game, and it's really just the higher the mechanical ceiling for a game is, the more I seem to find myself being drawn to the game.
Right, and I mean, we, between League of Legends, which, we're here to talk about, that's the reason we're here, and you're bringing up Super Smash Bros. Melee now, I mean, those are two not just mechanical games, but mechanical, well-known competitive
Yeah.
games. Is it the competitive side of esports that draws you to these games?
Yeah, 100%. I've always been a very competitive person. I've always done sports growing up throughout high school, and I always have found myself like I mentioned earlier when I saw SKT playing at Worlds in season 3 and I saw the crowd and I saw how big it was and how like hype everyone was for it, I just immediately fell for the game. And I think it's very similar. There's a certain recipe that kind of draws me to games, and it definitely is like mechanical ceiling, competitive scene, you know. I think those are the two main things. So, I mean, you throw in some other stuff, but mechanical ceiling and the competitive scene definitely are the biggest factors that draw me in.
All right, well, you seem to be having the time of your life, you know, competing in League of Legends with Lotus. You seem to be doing well with that team, and I wish you the best. I'm going to refrain from betting against Lotus in the future. I have learned my lesson. Thank you so much for talking to me today. Yes, thank you for talking me today.
Yeah, thank you for talking to me as well. I enjoyed my time here.
All right, fantastic. Again, thank you so much. It was great getting to know you. Best of luck through the rest of the tournament.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. And to those of you watching and or listening, thank you for tuning in to the end here. I know this has been something of a long episode, but what can I say? Running long is what I do. So thank you for sticking around, and I shall see you next week.